Unique, fun romantasy books that you haven't even heard of? Baby girl, let's talk about it. Hey everyone, welcome back to Tea with Brie. Today my tea looks like 100% water, but it's not. I made my own ginger lemon tea today. So slay for me. It's delicious, can't recommend it enough. And if you're new here, welcome. This is a place where we grab our tea, we light our candles, we get cozy, and we chat about stuff. Pop culture, pop girlies, books, Olympics, all that kind of stuff. Because right now I'm obsessed with two things: the Olympics and reading every fantasy with a romance subplot or main plot that I can get my hands on. Y'all, it's like I'm mentally unwell at this point. Like I cannot stop consuming fantasy books. I feel like the problem I've been running into is that I need more recommendations. Like I have been scanning YouTube, scanning all the different social media sites to find like more recommendations for like, if you loved this, you'll love these books. And I feel like a lot of sites, they're just like recommending the same shit over and over and over again. And not to be another broken record, but I wanted to recommend some things that I feel like I haven't seen as much recommended on this site, but that are like truly such good books. So this is for my girlies that loved Fourth Wing, that love a romantasy, that wanted to love Sarah J Maas more, but they wanted the writing to be like a little bit better. No disrespect, okay? I'm a writer too. I'm not trying to say I could do better, but I'm just saying like I appreciate a well-crafted sentence. And I liked Fourth Wing, but like when they're throwing just like modern vernacular into a fantasy story, like it bothers me, okay? And that might just be me. But if you loved Fourth Wing, you like this type of romantasy stories, but you want like more recs that are maybe a little bit better written, dare I say, baby girls, you're in the right place. That's what we're gonna do today. So what I look for in a fantasy and a romantasy, and all of these will be like romantasies or fantasies with very strong romance subplots, are a couple of things. I want really good world building. I don't want to just feel like you took any old romance and you just like dropped it in a fantasy story, like just for the hell of it. You're like, we can just throw that there. They just are wearing peasant clothing and that's what makes it a fantasy. No, honey. I want like something interesting about the world. I want to feel like I'm escaping to like a different place. Escapism in 2024. Am I right? The next thing I really enjoy in a story is like really strong characters. And that doesn't mean they have to be like physically jacked, even though peep the muscles. It just means that like I want the characters to have a sense of like self or direction or something that makes them unique, or just like interesting characters to read, like well developed, not just like, no disrespect to the OG romantasy Bella Swan, but she was a bit of a self-insert character, you know? I want like characters that are a little more interesting. I also want a strong romance. Y'all, I'm in my romance era. I want an interesting romance. I'm not that interested in insta love. So these are not going to be insta love books. I love insta lust. That's a whole different thing, baby girl. But insta love is like, no, we're not doing that right now. In 2024, like we're not doing that. So they're not insta love. And there's some really amazing side characters. There's like a whole cast of characters that you can like be interested in and root for. I find that what makes you want to read a story is that you're like interested legitimately in what happens to the characters. And if it's just the romance that you're focused on and then the two main characters hook up, you have like no reason to like keep reading the story sometimes. So I feel like a great cast of characters really notches the tension up a ton. And so that's what I'm bringing you today. Bringing you all my faves, all my recs. And these are recs that I don't see everywhere on YouTube and like the romantasy recs or like everywhere on social media. Like I'm trying to bring you slightly unique recs so that you too can increase your TBR pile like mine. Okay, so to start it off strong, number one book rec is Radiance by Grace Draven. Now, you might be like, are we getting into bestiality early, girl? Because that doesn't look like a human on the cover. Well, in this world, there's like more human-like species and then there's other types of species and they like intermix and interplay. So it's not really bestiality because it's like, it's more like an alien or something like that. I'm not selling it, but this is a really good book. It's definitely for my cozy fantasy girlies. This is not like an epic fantasy. The world is really good and really well developed, but it is not vast and sprawling and Game of Thrones-esque. It's like cozy, small world. And the characters are adults, they are mature. So the romance is like it's an arranged marriage. So all my arranged marriage Kiki girlies, this is the place to go. That turns into, you know, a little something. So I just really enjoyed these characters. I really enjoyed the growth within the characters. Again, the world is really good. So if you're looking for like arranged marriage, you're looking for like cozy, you're looking for just like a really good romance and a cute and really quick read, Radiance is for you. Okay, so up next, this is a book I really do not see blasted around, and I'm ashamed at that because The Bird and the Sword by Amy Harmon is so good. Amy Harmon is an amazing writer, and the reason I love this book so much is that the writing is super well done. It's just like a well-written book. Like, it's hard to find these days, y'all. The writing is amazing. The world building is really well done. It's like very much like a kind of meager, small girl who's like has a very strong spirit, but she's basically not speaking at the beginning of the book. She's not saying anything, and you kind of find out why, but she's kind of kidnapped by this king and taken to a kingdom, and like things happen. It's like they kind of learn to love each other, maybe, who could say. I mean, it's romantic. I'm not really giving anything away, but I really like the main character. If you liked Fourth Wing, you know, a girl kind of coming into her own, learning her power, learning her strength, being a badass, and also falling in love, The Bird and the Sword is amazing. And dare I say it, better written. I'm feeling sassy today, sorry. Okay, so up next, I have a couple young adult recs for you. And I have to say, I feel like the line between genres these days is truly just like intermixing and interplaying. Like, I think the first book of A Court of Thorns and Roses, I think that first book in that series was a young adult book when it was first put out. If I'm not wrong, I was back in the OG days, so I remember this being released. And I think a fourth wing book is new adult, so it's like everything is kind of going everywhere, right? We have young adult characters like the ones Leigh Bardugo wrote in Six of Crows that are basically 29 and 30, but saying they're 18, but I still love that book. It's amazing. All that to say, don't write off young adult just because it's young adult. Like, these characters are still usually older, 17, 18, and usually facing like very adult issues. And also the books are really well written. So the first rec I got is A Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. So if I had to give you a short plot for this, Elizabeth, a librarian, teams up with a sorcerer to stop an ancient evil. And need I say more? Librarian, sorcerer, you see where this is going. This is such a good book. It's just good. Like, I don't know what else to say. It was such a surprise when I read it. I just enjoyed it so much. The characters are so lovable. There is like some cozy fantasy elements here. And I love seeing a main character librarian, like, slay. You got books eating people, like, chef's kiss. The romance here is just very charming. There's not a lot of fraught tension back and forth, this and that. It's just more charming. It's just more adorable and a quick read. So I can't recommend this one enough. On the young adult train, we also have The Wrath and the Dawn by Renée Ahdieh. Some people don't like this one as much because of certain elements to do with the male love interest, of which I can totally understand that. However, I still really loved it. I'm a basic bitch, what can I say? I thought the writing was really well done. The world building is really well done. I thought the side characters were interesting and had like their own lives and their own things going on. I found that there was a little bit of like the main female character is just so amazing because everyone says she's so amazing, but she's kind of just like every other girl. But I still really love the story. I feel like the love story is really well done. It just kind of gives you those little butterfly feelings. Basically, long story short, our main character queen, Shazi, has to marry this murderer king because she plans on killing him. So she agrees to marry him because she's going to stab him because he killed her friend. However, once they get married, they start to fall for each other, and a whole bunch of hijinks ensue. So there's definitely some tension here. The romance is very tense, very fraught, with our main girl kind of going back and forth at war with her emotions. It takes place not in a Western setting, which is chef's kiss in fantasy these days, kind of hard to find. So definitely recommend this book. Lots of unique elements about it. Also, for my fourth wing girlies, I have to recommend An Ember in the Ashes. Now, this is a trilogy by Sabaa Tahir, and it is not popular. Like, when this book came out, it was wildly popular, and I believe this book still circulates in lots of bookstores today. So it is popular, but I just don't hear people talking about it anymore. It's not in the romantasy or fantasy with the romance subplot conversation anymore, and I'd like to bring it back because it's such a good book. It's extremely well written. The world is, again, not Western fantasy, really, really well done. There's dark academia vibes at the beginning because the main male character is kind of like going through war school And there's class struggle, there's ancient magic, there's terrible parenting, there's journeying. And I will say, this is definitely a fantasy book with a romance subplot. I feel like the rest of the books I'm recommending are very strong on the fantasy or on the romance part, but this book is a little bit more, the romance is a little bit more of a subplot, but I still loved it. There's 3 books to go through, so you got plenty to go through. This book is also set in an empire, so it's kind of based on old Rome, which I also think is really interesting, and it hasn't really been done as much in YA, and I also think Salvage does a great job with this series in general. All right, so moving on, this is back to our adult. We have A Fate Inked in Blood. This is the most recent release I have on the list. I don't hear it being talked about as much, and I thought it was really good. It's like Old Norse vibes, like Viking vibes. We have a shield maiden as our MC, and we have like a very brawny, strong, classically jacked, peep the muscles, male love interest. And the first 20% of this book was like chef's kiss. So good, so fast paced, so interesting, so like good at setting the scenes and the tension in the world. However, as it got on, it did kind of lag for me, but I had a couple other friends read this book recently too, and they were all obsessed with it. So I'm like, I probably need to include it and not just let my bias at the end kind of, go. But I think it's a great romance, and I really enjoyed reading it, mostly for the romance. The world building kind of fell apart for me at the end, but the romance did stay strong. So, okay, I have to include The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern because I need this book to be everywhere. I need everyone to be talking about it at all times. And the fact that they're not, and I don't see it in like romantasy recs anymore, is crazy. So this is actually more of like magical realism type of vibes. It's not like epic world fantasy at all. It is very much like 2 illusionists, which are like bound by this like magical competition, find themselves like linked through their rivalry. And it's set against the backdrop of this really amazing, like magical disappearing circus. So if you like Strange the Dreamer, I feel like that writing, that like kind of whimsical type of writing is very similar with The Night Circus. And if you haven't read this book, like honestly, I don't need to say much about it. Romance definitely is very strong. Just like pick up The Night Circus. It'll make you laugh, it'll make you cry, it'll make you die because you'll be so sad that it ended. Okay, I'm gonna end with 2 trilogies because I love a thick trilogy. I love when I like can explore the world a lot. And so these are probably my favorite on this whole list. The first would be The Winter's Curse trilogy by Marie Rutkaski. This book to me, this whole trilogy, this whole series is so well done. I wish so badly that I could go and like reread this back from the beginning. It annoys me to no end that I do not see this book being talked about everywhere. It's so good. The writing is phenomenal. The world is so interesting. The main characters, like there's this whole cast of characters that you get to know and love. The relationships are so fraught and so complicated, not just between the main love interest, but between all of these different side characters. It is just so well done. I feel like this book and the next series I'll recommend are the most well done of any of these books. And the romance is astounding in these books. Chef's kiss. Some people don't like it for elements of the plot in terms of how the 2 main characters meet. I'm not going to get into that so much here because I feel like the whole story as a picture kind of explains why that happened and then also rectifies it and flips it on its head. So there's plot twist galore in these books. So The Winter's Curse trilogy, if you're looking for a good romantasy, even just a good fantasy, cannot recommend these series enough. Okay, so the last trilogy series on my list is the Winter Night series, which is by Catherine Arden, and the first book is The Bear and the Nightingale. These books are so beautifully written. It must be read in the winter. It needs to be read in the winter when you're cold and you're holding like your cup of soup or your cup of cocoa and you're just like sipping it by the fire. That's when it needs to be read. But some of us live in places where winter ain't coming, honey. It's just winter. It's the same temperature all year round, California. So we have to do what we can. I have to recommend this book. I need it to be talked about everywhere. It's so good. The romance is definitely more of a subplot, but I loved the romance through it. And the first book kind of takes a while to get going, I will say that. Their books are set in medieval Russia, so hence the winter cozy vibes. And the books start following Vasya, our main character, who can see these spirits. So it's very much based on like old Russian folklore. It's very much exploring like the tension between church and like these old ancient spirits that the people used to worship and used to venerate. And The characters are mind-blowingly good. It's written in third person, kind of more omniscient point of view, so you really get to explore like a ton of different characters, but you stay with Fozzie most. It's just like you're going through Russia, it's winter, it's cozy, you feel freezing, you just feel all the vibes. It is the best series, winter series of all time, and honestly just like one of my favorite book series of all time. I just recently reread the entire series. I flew through it, so just bear with me on the first book. It is a little slow to get going, but it's going to pay off in dividends. Okay, it's going to pay off in dividends, so just try and remember the names and some of the terminology, and you will be blown away by this series. So anyway, those are all I have. I hope that at least one of these was like more unknown or more unique to you. Let me know below if you already read all of these or if you're excited to read any of them. I would love to know. And yeah, I'm just a girl who loves the Olympics and I love reading. And if you have any other great fantasy recs, romantasy recs in the vein of what I've just listed, please drop them below. I would be obsessed to have them. So with all that being said, I'll see you next week.